Hi, my name's Camille Alexander. I'm from Houston, Texas. We grew up all over, though. My family traveled a lot. My biological father, he left us when I was 5 years old, never saw him again. My mother quickly remarried, and my stepdad then adopted my sister and I, and we became his kids. And it started what looked like was going to be a very happy, normal life. The problem was my mom didn't have a lot to work with. Her legacy growing up was not a great legacy. She came from a background of abuse, and I think that's all she knew. There was just nothing, there's no hope for her, nothing hope for her to change or to change the legacy that she would give my sister and I. And so that's kind of where we came from. It's just not in a home where we were told very often that we were loved, a home where we were told that we were even wanted, or we were just often told that we were a mistake, and that's what we were always going to be. I guess we grew up Catholic, but we were only ever at Mass on Easter. I never went and did any of the classes, any of the catechisms or anything like that, so we never read the Bible, never dug into the Bible as a family. And I never really understood anything about what the true faith was, or a true relationship with Christ was.
I'm David Alexander. I'm from Amarillo, Texas. I grew up in Texas most of my life. I grew up in a home of very strong believers, going to church. My parents both loved Jesus and still love him to this day. And they did their best to raise me and my brothers to grow up and love Jesus and have a relationship with him. So I grew up going to church every week, was in the youth group when I was in high school, was a leader in the youth group, played in the youth group band. So very involved in church. But if I look back on my motivation back then, the motivation for going to church wasn't to have a relationship with Christ or fellowship with other believers. It was a fun time to hang out with my friends and meet girls. So when I turned 18, joined the Army, was an infantryman. I went to Fort Benning and was surrounded with a whole lot of darkness. Didn't know any other believers, and just was in a very sinful environment. And there was a whole lot of that was very appealing to me, a lot of attraction to the sin that was going on around me at the time. And I can't even really say I drifted from the Lord, because I can't really say that I even knew him at that point. But I definitely drifted from the faith and from having believers in my life to encourage me. But during this time, my parents never gave up on me. There was a whole lot of prayer on my behalf from my grandparents and my parents and the people in the church that I grew up on, that just kept praying me through this entire period of my life. So Camille and I met when we were both at Texas A&M. I was in ROTC, and after graduation, I commissioned, and we came here to Fort Rucker for flight school. We'd been here about 6 months, and one evening there was a knock on our door, and we opened it up, and it was a guy named John Motes, and he said he was just going around inviting people to church, and if there's anything he could pray for us about. So prayed for us for a minute and invited us to church.
I really wanted to go because I had spent so much time with David's family, and I had seen how different their family was than my family was growing up. And the big difference, what I could see at that point, was they went to church and they loved each other, they loved God. And so my interest was sparked, and I wanted to see what else there was to church and God.
So the very next Sunday we came, we parked out across the street and came in the front door. And as we were walking in the front door, Sonny Moore was there shaking hands and greeting people. And as soon as he saw us, he knew that we were new and it was our first Sunday. Sonny, he's got he's got the thing, he recognizes new faces. So
Thank you.
we sat down and service starts, and of course Sonny asks, "Hey, where's all the new people at?" And the next thing we know, we had a microphone shoved in our face, and we had to, say, "Hey, we're new. We're from Texas." And
Well, you said we're from College Station, Texas, and we heard a loud whoop from the choir. So obviously, really good people went to this church.
Yeah. So as we were leaving the parishes, they went to A&M and they chased us down and took us to lunch. Then that
afternoon we had another visit from John Motes, but he brought Sonny Moore and Dr. Mike McQueen with him, and they just wanted to talk to us about our walk with God, where we were as a family, and if we thought we were thinking about coming back to church. And we had that initial contact with Dr. Mike. We started going to his house for Bible study and attending his Sunday school. And Dr. Mike is a larger-than-life person in a lot of ways. And he started investing in me and David right away. And there was something about him that was different, because I was never afraid to ask him questions. I could ask him anything I wanted. And he preached the gospel to me for the very first time, the full gospel. And I could start to understand my need for salvation, why I needed salvation, why my parents needed salvation. And so many things happened in that first year we were here. We got pregnant with our first child, and I was just scared immediately, because I was really afraid I would pass on that same legacy that my mom had passed on, that I was going to be stuck with that, and didn't realize that there was an opportunity to change. And Dr. Mike and Miss Pam just poured into me and loved me in a way that I'd never really felt before. And even just simplest things like throwing us a baby shower, and the commitment that they had, no matter what, they would answer the phone no matter what, and do things like Dr. Mike would come to our house after Sullivan was born. He'd come to our house after work to rock him on the porch so we could rest. And it was just an unconditional love that I'm not sure I'd ever felt before.
So after about a year and a half, we finished flight school and we had to move on. So we actually got orders, went back to Fort Hood, Texas, and we had to leave Enterprise.
So we moved back to Texas, and it was different this time because we got involved in a church right away. We wanted to be plugged in right away. And I opened my Bible for the first time, and I started to read it, and I wanted to understand more about these things I was really hearing about, understand more about what a true relationship with Christ looked like. And it was a point there in Texas that it shifted from just this curiosity and wanting to know more to a true submission that this is the life I wanted. I wanted to follow Christ. I wanted to serve him. I needed that salvation. I was a sinner, and it wasn't just about other people's sin against me, but my sin that was the real problem that needed to be forgiven. And it was there in Texas, just digging into my Bible, remembering the words that Dr. Mike had told to me, that I came to that realization that I needed salvation. I needed forgiveness.
And I'm watching Camille this whole time, and up to this point, I was kind of going along with church because I never doubted that there was a God. Just his part in my life was something I was indifferent about, but I was going to church because it seemed like the good thing to do when you grow up and you start having kids, and because it would make my parents happy. But as I'm watching this change in Camille through this time, from this very broken young lady to what she was becoming, and recognizing that it was because of the love of Christ shown to her through various people that I started to come to this realization that maybe this isn't just a religious thing I do because it's what's expected of me. Maybe there's something to having this relationship with Jesus and, the recognition that I was broken too and that I was a sinner and that I needed Christ. So we were in Texas a little over 3 years, and we got orders to come back to Enterprise, come back to Fort Rucker.
We were excited because it felt like we were coming back home, and we were so excited to get back in the church and understand what church was and understand how we could serve people and how we could just join this family and become a part of it and really just live our lives as much as possible here with these people.
So Camille, while we were in Texas, she started playing bass in the band at that church. So got here and she immediately got plugged in with the praise band. There was an opening for bass player, coincidentally. So she started serving there, and then we automatically just jumped right back in with Dr. Mike's class. And this time it was a little bit different because we were older, and the students in the class were younger. So it was kind of more of a helping Dr. Mike a little bit, mentoring the younger kids. So we started serving that way. Then about a year ago, Caleb approached me and asked about teaching a Sunday school, and we thought about it and prayed about it, and a little bit apprehensive because we didn't know how much longer we were going to be here, but felt like God was calling me to step out and do that as a basically not because I was awesome and knew everything about the Bible, but because it was an opportunity to learn, to really get into the Bible and learn more about service and leadership. So we started leading a Sunday school, and then we saw the New Orleans trip was coming up, and Camille really wanted to go, and I'd been to New Orleans a couple times, and I was like, yeah, I don't know if I really want to go to New Orleans again, especially during Mardi Gras season. But Camille talked to me about it, Caleb talked to me about it, and we ended up going on our first mission trip as a family. And I don't say all that, to point a finger and say, look at us and look at all the things we do at the church. We just wanted to be faithful. We felt like any way we could be faithful to God, we needed to do it because of all the people who had been faithful in our lives. People from this church who were very faithful, and it had an impact on our lives. And sometimes it might not seem like you're doing a lot. You can be standing in a park in the rain trying to talk to random strangers about Jesus and just think, oh, this is pointless. Like, why are we doing this? There's no point in this. But you never know. You're just being faithful, and you don't know what God's going to do. Who knows how many doors John Moats knocked on in his time inviting people to church, but it made an impact on our lives. It
did, and I don't know how many people didn't answer, how many people didn't accept that invitation, but if he hadn't knocked on our door, if he had quit and he hadn't continued to be faithful in his calling from God to invite people to church, then our lives would look very much different. And I can't express I don't know how to express how thankful I am for this church, for everyone that has encountered with us. My legacy went from something dark to now I have a legacy of faithfulness that I can pass on to my kids, and I pray I will pass it on to them, that the faithfulness of other people, the faithfulness to serve, the faithfulness to knock on a door, the faithfulness to chase us down after church, the true faithfulness of Dr. Mike and Ms. Pam to serve so thanklessly so often. And now I pray that we will be faithful. We will be faithful to them, and just the faithfulness of God, that He was so faithful to us our entire lives. Even my childhood, he was faithful to me then, and I see how he worked every single moment out to perfectly shape our salvation story, to bring us here to where we are today, and to this church, to First Baptist. This is our home. You are our family, and we love you.